There they are. So I really want to thank Megan, Katie, and Deli all for taking some time out of their summer to join us to talk about their experiences, what worked well, what they might do differently, what they're looking forward to start next school year after having a full year with Fuse, and also to answer questions that you might have about um, the fellowship in general. Stuff that you might not have asked me yet or anything like that. They've lived it for a year, so it's a great opportunity to have them here. First thing I want to do, though, is give them a chance to introduce themselves, where they teach, what they teach. Um, and we'll start with that and we'll go from there. So Megan, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Moss. I teach in Dumas. That's up in the Panhandle, kind of. I teach at a very high rate ESL school. I think we're like the second most ESL population in the state, except we're like behind, I guess, an El Paso school or something. But anyway, I teach 6th grade math. So we're some of the younger kiddos. And I teach, well, I guess we all kind of, well, no, not all of us, but in 6th grade math now, the state of Texas has us have 2 pre-AP classes. So I have the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows and not a lot of in between. So that is what I do. I'm going on my 4th or 5th year. I don't remember. Something. And I love it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Katie, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Katie, and I teach, well, let's see, it'll be 6, 7, and 8 math, and I teach resource and inclusion. So I have all the special ed kiddos. This will be my 3rd year in that role, but my 14th in the classroom. And Fuse has been fascinating for me because it looks a little bit different with kiddos who are in resource and inclusion, but it's been a really neat tool to have, and I'm excited to be here for my 2nd year.
Excellent. And you're in Dripping Springs ISD.
Sorry, yes, I'm in Dripping Springs outside of Austin.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, we've got folks from multiple states and countries actually on the call today. So if you don't know your Texas geography, Megan's up in the Panhandle area, Katie's in Central Texas, and then Deli. You want to go next?
Yes. I'm in Corpus Christi ISD. I teach 6th grade math.
All right, thanks. So we've got the whole state represented. So Corpus Christi is way down on the coast, Gulf of Mexico down there. So we've got everybody represented. And so the next piece, we'd just love to hear kind of your general thoughts, general experiences on that first year. And then we'll get into some more specifics after that. But we want to start back at the beginning. Megan, you want to go first? Just kind of your general thoughts on your first year in Fuse?
Yeah, so I was a little bit skeptical. I'm not going to lie. At the beginning, I kind of was like, oh, this is going to be just another training. Like, we go to our region office and we do these trainings. And but from the moment we walked in there, we knew it was great. We knew we were learning something. And I think I said yesterday or the day before when we were in our training, when people ask me about it specifically, or my teammates, we always say, yeah, we're learning a lot and we're doing a lot. And they're like, well, what? And we're like, well, I don't know that we can really pinpoint it. Like, it's hard to exactly say because there's so much going on with it. And we have been yes people with Fuse. We figure if we're going to put all this time, energy, and effort into it, we're going to be the yes people, and we're going to stay consistent with it to see if it really does work for our kids and us. And I'm so glad we did that, because we have definitely seen massive improvements. We also implemented TIA, and we can point back as we have earned the highest level of TIA, officially, unofficially, why that is, what we've implemented with Fuse into our classroom and how we stayed consistent with it, how that contributes to us earning that designation for TIA. So there was a lot of skepticism going into it. And when we left that weekend, we were like just silently knowing that we had learned so much, and we were excited to go and implement it into our classroom. So there we are.
Very good. Do you want to tell us real quick what TIA is? Some of our non-Texas teachers.
Oh yeah. There's non-Texas people here. So Texas TIA is Texas Initiative Allotment. Is that what it is? Is that what
I think it's Teacher Incentive Allotment.
Teacher Incentive Allotment, not Texas. It is a way that we can earn more money based on, I think different districts do it differently. Some people use STAR results, some people use MAPS results, some people, I think, even create their own test depending on what teachers are up for that incentive. We used MAPS, and it depends on the status of your school, right? Like the, I don't know, what do they use?
Yeah, I
What
think it
am I
depends
looking
on
for?
which level in TIA you're in, but essentially, big picture, it's a incentive program that the state of Texas sponsors for exceptional teachers to earn more money based on their student outcomes.
Yes. Yes. And
So
there's
it's
3
a
different levels. And I was thinking about where you land based on what need-based district you're in.
Yeah.
Anyway, they use different numbers, but 2 of us earned masters, and the other 2 that came to Fuse earned the exemplary, which is the middle category. So it's pretty cool. I'm
very
excited for
good.
it.
Thank you. Katie, you want to go next? And your overall experience last year and things like that.
Yes. So my overall experience was super positive. A lot of what Fuse teaches is stuff that I've used kind of my whole teaching career. I actually started out in a charter school. And so a lot of the practices within Fuse are things that I learned as a baby teacher, if you will. So I was really excited that all of these ideas and practices were being brought to all of my colleagues, maybe people who had different teaching experiences or learned to be a teacher in different ways. And the best way that I can sum up my experience is by a one-liner that my class and I came up with together, which is, we can do hard things. So it applies to all of the different Fuse practices, whether it's tests or corrections or looking at your mistakes and finding ways to fix them. We can do hard things, which for some kiddos who struggle significantly with math, the hard things part is pretty obvious, but the we can do hard things is less obvious. And so it's been really empowering for both me and for my students to look at these practices through a special education lens.
Good, thank you. Deli, you want to go next?
Yes. I would have not had like the data from the surveys if it was not for Fuse. Not just data, but I wouldn't have known my students' responses. So like I know with my district, there's not going to be a year 2 with Fuse that I kind of want to even find some kind of like questionnaires that I can give to my students, just because going through it, and it was just like, oh my gosh, so this is how my honors kids feel, these kids that are in a different socioeconomical class as maybe my second period, or so on. I wouldn't have known just really how they felt if it wasn't for the questionnaires. And it's just really knowing just how the students feel at times is helpful, that I kind of want to now come up with something on my own. I think it's just very insightful information, and I mean, ultimately, I think it helped me.
All right, good, thank you. And I just put I know we've been talking about the student modules and the reports and everything that you receive. So just for everybody joining us today, I put a sample report in the chat. So that's something you can look through. Obviously, the data is made up in that one, but it gives you a great sense of how the report will tie together the practices that you learn into how your students are feeling more at ease in your class, more comfortable, more confident on things like that. So I'm curious, Megan, I know you mentioned the other day that some changes you guys made around maybe retesting revision or different thoughts on that. I just wonder if there's something in particular from your first year, some kind of change maybe that happened last year that you might want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think that the first years are getting ready to do this module coming up next, is what it sounded like to me. Maybe not, but the reframing, what is it called? Reframing mistakes?
Reframing mistakes.
And I think this is where I had like a massive panic attack. And I don't know if you guys have it as cold in there this year as you did last year, Or is this online?
We're online. Everybody's, I don't know their
everybody's
comfort level,
online.
but everybody's at home.
Okay, well, I hope you're not as freezing as I was last year. However, we were in this big room and it was freezing cold, and they were talking about allowing your kids to do test corrections, and I was like, and we literally, my teammate and I just said nope, and we started zoning them out. And then because we thought we're never gonna do it, we don't have the time, it's not we just literally don't have the time, or we thought we didn't, we did. And so we just kind of started zoning out, and then as they kept talking, we were like, oh man, they just convinced us that we really need to do that, huh? And so we became believers real quick. We went outside, sat there and thought, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And then we came up with it. We started doing test corrections the week after the test during bell work time, which is like 8 to 10 minutes at the beginning of our class. And they had to do it with a form. So Monday would be like questions 1 through 4. And they would have to write out in sentences why they got wrong, what they got wrong, and how they corrected it. So basically they were collaboratively, sometimes collaboratively, most of the time independently, sometimes collaboratively, like fixing those mistakes. And that kind of took the shame out of it. And it also gave them a chance to be able to make mistakes. And it's like, it's okay, right? So we ended up doing that. Total game changer. So glad we did that. It wasn't just about upping the grade. It was also about changing the culture in the room from a culture of fear, almost, of like, I can't get something wrong, to a culture of like respect and like, it's okay to get something wrong. And when I do, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. I'm going to be able to go to my teacher and say, I got that wrong. And then we together figure out why we got that wrong, and take the shame out of it. It's like a respect thing, right? So it's been huge. I would say the biggest thing for us this year, for sure.
Thank you. And Katie, I'm wondering, is there any particular practice or anything that from last year that maybe stands out that you used most with your students, or something you're looking forward to this year?
For me, it was exam speeches. So a lot of my students particularly would walk into exams and just eeny, meeny, miny, mo, guess, flip the page. They didn't believe in themselves. None of them. So I had 12. I had 12 students in my resource classes. Not a single one had passed any STAR test in 3rd grade, 4th grade, or 5th grade.
Wow.
Yep, not one. So we just got scores back, and 5 of the 11 passed.
Oh, did you cry? I would have cried.
I did. Yep, I ran up to school when I heard they got the results and banged on the door and made them let me in. And I was like, I need to know who passed. And 2 were 1 question off, 2 others.
Oh,
so
congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you. It was, I'm just so proud of them. I had a group of kiddos who really believed they couldn't. And same as you, Megan, the practice of going through and fixing mistakes and not just saying, oh, I can't, or I don't know, or I'll never know, or I'll never be able to do it. I think empowered them to realize they could do it. And then coupled with our exam speeches, I don't want to let any secrets out, but Dr. Yeager talks a lot about using stress as a powerful tool during exams. And so for my kiddos, we talked a lot about it, and their MAP scores went through the roof. Their STAR scores obviously increased dramatically. And so those were my 2 favorites.
Yeah, big piece. So exam speeches, everybody, is it's like the next step to the culture of learning speech practice. So culture of learning speech is one you'll get access to it tomorrow. You can do it, you'll do it over the summer. But it really helps you think through your language of how you're going to talk about your culture and introduce your class. And then exam speeches, we get down into the weeds of what exactly am I going to say when I first announce that test coming up, whether or project or performance, whatever it might be. And then what am I going to say the day of that test performance? And then what am I going to say when those grades come back? So you kind of wrap your potentially high stressful situation, with intentional language around it. So Maureen, Katie, so with the exam speech, like, what did you see differently did you see things different with your students once they got the results beforehand? Like, how do you think the speech may help to that?
I think, so there are different parts of the exam speech. You newbies don't know that yet, but there's a pre-speech that you give before you even get to test day, there's one you give right before that you hand out the test or start the test, and then there's one afterward. And I think all three were super powerful for my kids. I think initially the speech that I give after an exam comes out was the most important, because I think a lot of them would see a really low score and just shut down. And they weren't willing to re-engage. They weren't willing to do corrections. And so spending the beginning of the year talking about, okay, this is data. It's not judgment. It's just information. What can we do with it? And once they got on that train, then the other ones just fell in line. So our exam days, they were excited for map testing this spring. I've turned them into little data nerds like myself. They were super pumped. They were writing out their goals. They all beat their goals on map, which I was super excited about.
Yes.
They rolled in for their cookie bags that I make, and they were like, we're going to get it. We're going to do it. We've got this. So it was, I was just really grateful that they were excited and happy. Fail or pass or whatever happened, they were excited to do it.
Very good. Deli, how about you? Was there any particular practice or change that you saw with the culture in your class last year?
I think just being mindful that setting that it was like a safe environment to make mistakes. That was the main thing in that first module that resonated with me, that it's okay to make mistakes. And I constantly sense myself saying it well, I'd rather you get it wrong than don't try at all. Because that's why sometimes they just don't want to try, because they're afraid to make mistakes. So really just letting them know it's okay if you mess up, because I'm here to help you. And really, I want you to make mistakes, want you to try so that I can fix them. So just kind of setting in your classroom culture that it's okay if you mess up.
Yeah, and beyond that, it's okay, and it's a value add, right, to the culture in the class. We talk a lot about that in the next modules you guys will be doing, is that what we celebrate or what we honor, as the teacher or authority figure, whoever else in the classroom, everybody's watching that. So especially in the beginning of the school year, the way we talk about what mistakes mean in our classroom, everybody's judging then the next time somebody's asked to raise their hand if they're going to do it or not, because they know what the request means in terms of it not being a character judgment, but more just wanting to add that value to the classroom. So we're going to we'll have a chance for some questions here. So I want everybody thinking if they have any questions for these fellows. But I'm really interested too, if you have any just words of advice or things you might have done differently, if you could go back in time, and if you were just now starting your first year in Fuse, what's something that you might have done more of, less of, focused more on, done differently? In our last panel I did, somebody said, well, I tried to do everything right off the bat, and that was way too much. So I'm just curious, and let's go around if you have thoughts on that. Megan, is there anything you would do differently if you were starting Fuse over?
When I started teaching, I knew I wanted to really use data to inform my instruction. I wanted to do that with the kids too. So I wanted them to be tracking their data in their journal, knowing their data. And that was really important to me. I did that my first year of teaching, and then it kind of tapered off, and they kind of got away from it. So going into last year, I jumped hardcore into that with my pre-AP classes. This year, it's going to be all of them. Because every year I find, and Fuse taught us this too, those kids that you turn into, like Katie said, your little data nerds just like you, that is part of that, granting them their own agency type of mentality. So as you're granting them that agency, showing them that respect, showing them that that they are capable of tracking that sort of information for themselves, and then using that data to collaborate as a group, and then succeed with it, it's huge. So I'm going to do that with all 5 of my classes, all 98, 99 of my kids this year. It's going to be a thing. So no excuses with it this year. We're all doing it. It's going to be great.
Very good. Thank you, Katie. Anything you do differently starting over?
Yes. So throughout the year, Dr. Yeager gave several speeches and provided some really neat graphics to go along with what he taught us. And in the beginning of the year, when I was explaining Fuse to the kids, I talked more with them about the practices and less about the science. And after the fall PLI, which was in October, I think, and after getting their first 2 rounds of data back from their engagement modules, I was able to share data with them. And then I started to, I don't even know if I'm supposed to do this, but show them some of the cool things that Dr. Yeager had put on the screen when he was talking about the different kind of neuroscience aspects of his trainings, and they ate it up. I think it took the practices of Fuse from being something that was kind of, I don't want to say hokey, but sometimes kids think, oh, it's just, teacher
Just far
stuff.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. She's a hippie.
It's not tangible for them.
And so it was really fun for them to learn about how their brains work, and that there was a real cool scientist who was called a doctor, and these were the neat things that he was saying. And so I think this year I'll be better about sharing the scientific side of Fuse with my kiddos so that they can nerd out on that part a little bit too.
Yeah, I've heard from many Fuse teachers, especially teachers of older students, who are completely transparent in the beginning that I'm part of this fellowship this year. I'm working to better understand adolescent engagement, adolescent development, and the way that, oftentimes you teenagers misinterpret some things we say as adults, and just being totally upfront and open about it and say this, and that's why we're going to do these modules. That's why these things are going to be working on, because that's the only way you can get feedback from them too, if they are seeing a difference, or if what they're hearing from you is different than what they maybe have heard from teachers in the past. And you want to get, like, you guys are going to be practicing these speeches and reframing the way you talk about mistakes. You want to get some credit for it too. You want them to see that you're working on this and working to improve. So that's a great, I very much recommend using everything that we share directly to teachers. Is perfectly fine to share with the students as well, and be totally open about it. Deli, how about you? Anything, if you were going to start over with Fuse, that you might do a little different?
It was exactly what you said. I promise I was already thinking about that. But it's just explaining to my kids what they're actually doing. Because I knew why they had to take, the surveys, or why they had to do the modules, why I had to do it, why they had to do it. And just telling on myself, I don't think I did a good job at explaining to the kids, like, what it is that I signed up for, meaning that they signed themselves up for. So the other 6th grade teacher wasn't part of Fuse. It was another resource teacher and an 8th grade teacher. So whenever they would sign up for it, they would see, 3 of us. And I was telling them they want, survey from all the math students in the district. But it wasn't real. But Miss so-and-so is not doing it because they have this other teacher. Was because she's not part of it. But just really, they just felt as it was just another task to do. And so they just, wanted it, get it over with. Some did take it serious, but I know a lot did it. So I think to, get better data, actually explain what it is that we're doing is not just another task. This is going to give me insightful information, just so that they can participate a little bit more better, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and we know that, teenagers very much, and everybody really, gravitates towards, whether we know it or not, gravitate towards wanting to contribute and help the greater good. And the second module that the students do actually talks a lot about purpose, and talks a lot about how them doing this module, or giving this feedback to this group called Fuse, is helping to improve classroom cultures around the United States and beyond, at this point. So that very much, I'd say, open and honest, communication with the kids, whether we have some 5th grade teachers in the program this year, 5th grade all the way through 12th grade, is going to make them better see that they're contributing to the greater good as well. But we've got a question in the chat, because I know we've been talking a lot about the practices with everybody today, but they haven't seen any of them yet, and they might sound a little I don't like the word overwhelming, but they might seem big, and extensive, and that we've been talking a lot about speeches. So the question is, how much of the speeches speeches around the test, first day, all that stuff. Did y'all write on your own, or what extent are they written with the help of the Fuse modules and practices? Anybody want to, if you remember back to last year when you did your culture of learning speech and exam speeches, do you remember the support you got within the module?
Yeah, it's all done through the modules. And the guiding questions that they'll ask you, I found them to be really helpful. I didn't find the speech writing to be overwhelming at all. And then during coaching sessions and during PLIs, we had some opportunities to share parts of our speeches with other members of our cohort, and we could get feedback from them about it. I didn't find that part of the process to be overwhelming at all. It was really helpful.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful. We got in, if I'm right, we got the opportunity to kind of change up our speech if we saw necessary based on, yeah, that was probably the best part for me, because you think you got it down and then you hear some feedback and you're like, oh yeah, I need to tighten that part up. And that was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and everything that you'll do, you'll do the initial module and you write your speech within there, and it's broken up into chunks. You'll see examples in there as well. But then a lot of times, like I talked to teachers, and when you're in the moment, maybe you don't do it exactly like you're not reading your speech. It's more like an outline of how you want the key points you want to make sure that you're being open, honest, and transparent about with your students. And some people break it up over multiple days. Some do it at one time. It's really whatever works, best for you. The question, if I ever get the question, from a few teachers, do I have to do it this way? The question is always like, your context best. You've gotten the research from us, but we're not going to tell you exactly how to do it. We're going to learn from you because we want to hear how it went, doing it different ways in your class. And even this summer, Fuse, if you're doing this virtually or even asynchronously and you're watching this video, you'll be getting feedback from our facilitators on your speech. And then we're going to have opportunities then again at the end of the summer and through the other PLIs for you to get peer feedback on all of them as well. So I think I hope that answered the question in the chat. But who else has the next question? You can raise your hand and go up to the podium. We'd love to see and hear you. If you have any questions for these current Fuse fellows. Shelley, go ahead.
Hey, thank you for your time today. One of the questions I have is in regards to a strategy that really I learned from AVID. We're an AVID school, although I don't really see the strategies being used just particularly for AVID, because we also blend it with other strategies from the Fundamental 5. It's a kind of a blend of many strategies, but one of the things that we always are impressed upon to do is take the burden of work from the teacher to the student. And I always struggle with that. One, I think I have control issues. Two, I wonder, what does it look like? It's hard for me to view taking the burden from me to them. Did you see a change in them in that way?
Yep. I can take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the strategies, Shelley, that you'll learn, or one of the practices you'll talk about, is mining for mistakes. And it's kind of a collaborative process where you take a mistake that a student makes, and instead of the teacher correcting it, the teacher can identify it, and then you work as a group to identify the mistake and fix it. And so that's one really great way to take the burden of work away from the teacher and to put it back onto the students. And my students were always very proud when they could help a fellow student identify a mistake and fix it. So Fuse will give you concrete strategies that you can use in your classroom to put the burden of work back on the students.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that this word collaboration was always like on the tip of our brains all year, especially until October, till we had our fall PLI, because it was this idea of not having to have a black and white answer for everything, but creating a culture where we were just collaborating together. Like not having to have a grade for everything, but if there was a mistake, like we were talking about the big idea around that mistake. I let my kids phone a friend a lot. So if somebody raises their hand to answer a question and they don't get it, it's not like, oh, well, okay, move it on. It's like, no, okay, it's all right. Think through it. And you want to phone a friend and they can ask it somebody else. And then that way everybody is it's collaboration. Like everybody's in this together. We're all in it together. And yeah, you'll learn tons of strategies that are very useful.
Yeah, and I think I would just add that the strategies are definitely like a sequence, of questioning, but it's also a strategy of being transparent, with your students about why you're doing what you're doing. So that whole idea of keeping the burden of work on the student, we're very much that's definitely what we want to do. We take the approach we want to do that because that's a sign of respect. And
Yes.
if we were to save that student quickly and give them the answer when they're struggling through a problem, that might feel better in the moment, might make me feel better because I saved the day. But so often anybody else is going to see that as, well, you didn't respect me enough to let me work through it. But if I don't tell you that's what I'm doing, then I might just come off as I don't care, especially if I'm going to keep you in that moment of struggle. And it seems like I'm not throwing you that lifeline when all my teachers before, or some of my teachers before, haven't done that. So that's why we talk, and you'll see a lot in the modules, we talk about just explaining why we're doing what we're doing to our students so they know and give us the chance. What other questions or comments? Any just like logistical questions? So one question that came up in the first one was around, we were talking a lot on this first day about like all these practices, student modules. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts on were. Like, was Fuse a lot of it seemed like it was a lot of extra work, like on top of your already, busy teacher schedule, or just kind of talk about, like, did it seem overwhelming or a lot of work or anything like that?
No. I didn't think so, no.
No. Initially, I think I felt a little bit like Megan of where am I going to put this in my day? Because I already feel kind of squished with time, especially when I have kiddos coming to me in resource who are sitting at a 3rd grade level and I've got to get them all the way up to 6th, or at least expose them to 6th grade curriculum. But I think if you really dive into the practices and follow them correctly, I actually found myself with extra time in my class periods, more time for discussion, more time for minding mistakes. Initially, it felt overwhelming, but once I actually committed to doing all of it and doing it correctly, it felt pretty seamless.
And yeah, like you said, it kind of actually opens up more time, because when you change the culture in your classroom to be a safer environment for them to make mistakes, it opens up the kids to fail and it be okay, right? And so then there's more communication around what we're doing. There's more open communication. You're really changing the culture in your classroom if you decide to be consistent with these practices. And my thing is, like, if you're here, why not? We all have a little bit of room for improvement. So just be a yes person and jump on it and be consistent with it. And I'm telling you, you will see changes. You might not be able to exactly figure it out, but you'll have moments. Like, we've had a ton of moments in other trainings where we're like, this is Fuse. Is this not? Yeah, this is Fuse. Or this fits with Fuse. This is Fuse. And people are like, what the heck are these people talking about? But you'll have a lot of moments like that where you'll be like, oh, Fuse, thanks, Fuse. If you jump in and you're consistent with it, you will.
All right, thank you. We got time for a couple more questions. If anybody has one, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. All right, don't see. Oh, there's go. Michael, go ahead.
How much of this is similar to mastery learning? I mean, that's a buzzword that we sometimes hear. We had a teacher who was very, very gung-ho on mastery learning at our school. And he was consistent and he implemented it. And he got a lot of negative feedback from mostly parents, I think, who felt that he wasn't adequately preparing his students. Can you just comment on some of that?
I can talk a little bit about so I believe I'm not an expert in mastery learning, but I think that's essentially where you move on before you've mastered something, or is it wait till you've gotten to a mastery point and then moving on?
Well, all of his assessments, both quizzes and tests, could be taken an unlimited number of times
Oh, gotcha.
until the students had really mastered them.
Yeah.
And
So it's
and
more
that
like
was
a
his goal, you know. Yeah,
it's
you
like
keep doing it until you really, really master it. And it sounded great in practice, but it didn't work. It didn't work out so well, at least for him. He got a lot of negative pushback from.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to
his
do something
peers.
like that if you're not like the entire campus or the whole culture doing that. You know, I would imagine somebody doing that on their own wouldn't lead to a strong outcome. I will say, and I'd love, Megan, Deli, and Katie, your thoughts too. Like our retesting and revision policy practice is very much like we're not promoting a certain way to do it. It's more that making sure that the way you talk about mistakes and you talk about learning align with your retesting and revision policies. And the way that you talk about your retesting and revision policies, you don't have certain maybe pain points in there that inadvertently disengage a student from whatever that practice is that you want. So it's very much more, we don't promote a certain policy or practice, but we really want to help you think through how you communicate it and if it's in alignment with what you're promoting as your values.
Yes.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I will say that my goal is not ever mastery for, well, that sounded wrong. Like it probably should be, right? But my goal is not ever for the kids to think that they have to be 100% perfect on everything. That's not why I do test corrections. That's not why I give them the opportunity to revise or correct or anything like that. The goal is to show them that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to not be perfect, and how we handle that. There's not shame in it. You're not going to be shamed for it. That's the goal, because that's where you create workers. That's where you create yes people. So my goal isn't for them to think they have to be mastery level. My goal is for them to learn it's okay to not be perfect. I want a classroom of learning, not a classroom of compliance. So
in our district, we've bumped into the same thing, Michael, and our whole district actually has a revision policy where summatives are able to be redone, corrected. There's some flexibility for the teachers in there, but we have received a fair amount of pushback from parents and from staff, because their concern is that we're creating students who have a lack of accountability. And I see that. So we've kind of met that head on, both through conversation and through finding ways to still have accountability. So, for example, when we first rolled this out as a district, kids at the middle school level had until the end of the 9 weeks to make corrections, which was crazy for teachers because then you're just constantly grading things repeatedly. Yeah. And that isn't real life, and that's not really long-term doable. So what we did is we added back in pieces of accountability. You have 5 days from the day your grade is given back to you to come in. You have to come in for tutorials. You can't just try again. You have to come in and relearn whatever it was you made a mistake on. You have to show us, you have to demonstrate mastery or growth. You can't just guess C instead of B. And we've also had conversations with the community about it is real life. Retesting is a part of adulthood. If you fail your ACT or SAT or don't like your score, you can take it again. If you don't pass your driver's license test, you can take it again.
Amen.
There are teachers who don't pass their licensure exams several times who still have the opportunity to take it again. So a lot of it, I think, is kind of a gut reaction for people who grew up with grading policies being very old school and stringent. I think it's an ongoing conversation, and adding in measures of accountability has helped across the board.
And one element too that you guys will have once we do that practice, and then everybody else in the group has done it as well, is during the coaching sessions and later on in the summer, we also have the power of like other teachers within the network. So there's teachers that are wanting to like do a different policy and figure out just how to logistically make it work. Like if you've never allowed corrections before, retesting, and you're worried about like the amount of time it's going to take, or like just how technically you're going to make it work with your gradebook and everything else you got to do. So we always have a lot of sharing of, okay, this is how we do it in our district, this is how we do it in our school. So you can pick and choose kind of what might help get you where you need to get to. Did you have another question, Michael?
No, that was very helpful. That really puts my mind at ease. I think you put your finger right on the nub of the problem for this teacher I was speaking of. The parents didn't feel that there was enough accountability, and it was a nightmare for him because at the end of the quarter he had all of these repeated assessments coming back through. But to set limits and, as you say, not just giving them the opportunity to choose C instead of B, but to actually go through a required tutorial that involves some reflection. I think those are all things that I can adapt and make work in my classroom. So that was a very helpful response. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that so we have our facilitators. So you met Christian earlier, but you'll meet the others throughout the experiences. They're classroom teachers, so they know the logistics of like how things will work and how they won't work. So Dr. Yeager and I, like we talk a lot about the research and a lot about what how we align our language and framing how we talk about mistakes and grades. But it's always paired with practitioners, and we're not going to tell you like what your policy should look like, as I've said, but you'll be able to take some of those ideas and make it work in a realistic way, that takes into account everything, all the above. Any other questions or thoughts for our panel? You can raise your hand or put them in the chat. Oh, we got one more.
Hey, good afternoon.
ahead, sir.
Thanks for all your time. I guess kind of going off the conversation we were having about mastery learning and then the accountability you put in for taking retests, how much of that accountability do you treat like scaffolding that you then like remove? I guess what I'm thinking about is my own experience using standards-based grading, which is slightly different than mastery learning, but the same idea. Instead of retests, there's just instead of corrections, test corrections, there's like a second test, brand new questions. And I used to not have students be accountable for any kind of restudying in between the first test or the second test. This is for seniors and juniors, so the age group is a little different. But the idea being that in the real world, no one's going to make you restudy for your retest. So I understand that maybe for younger students, you want to put in that kind of accountability or structure to kind of just teach them how to restudy. Did any of that structure get treated as scaffolding and removed to try to see if students would intrinsically and independently restudy for their retests?
For me, it wasn't intentionally removed, but eventually it just fell off. So when we started the year with corrections, we would do something like Megan did. They had a corrections form where they had to show their correct work, identify their mistake, and go through the cognitive process of what did I get wrong? Why did I get it wrong? How am I going to fix it? And what we saw happen actually was the need for corrections became lessened because they would take the process that they were using on those forms and they would use it on their work for the initial assessment. So they went from doing a lot of things mentally and guessing on the initial assessment or using process of elimination if it was multiple choice to taking the time to write out their processes on paper while they took the initial test.
Yes.
And then they did better.
Yes.
So oftentimes they didn't even need to do corrections or a retest. I had an uptick in students asking if they could find other ways to demonstrate mastery. So I have some kids, especially in special education, where a standard test isn't going to demonstrate their mastery. And so if they weren't able to demonstrate mastery on the assessment that I'd given, whether it was a Canvas quiz or a paper test, they actually started to get pretty creative about finding ways that they could show me mastery. Some of them were verbal processors, so they would want to sit down with a problem and talk me through it. And I would give them credit for that, because ultimately what it comes down to is I need to know that they understand it. And if they can't do it on a multiple choice test, while I realize there are many things in life that are multiple choice tests, it's important to me that I know that they understand the material.
All right. Well, we will continue these conversations, Megan, Katie, and Deli with the other group, but with everybody else here, we will be having these kind of conversations all year long with your colleagues, with folks on our team. But at this point, I really just want to celebrate and thank Deli, Katie, and Megan for joining us today. Let's give them all a celebration face in our reactions down there at the bottom of the screen. I thank you guys for taking some time out of your summer day. And
You're
I'm
welcome.
glad you are enjoying it so far. But that's all we need for you today. Thank you very much.